Okay. We're now going to go on to our next question, which is aimed at Rhys from Plaid Cymru. This is on nature. So, and planning, nature and planning. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act was introduced in 2015, and in 2019, the Welsh Government announced a climate emergency. However, despite these commitments, the planning system often fails to apply the appropriate weight to climate change and biodiversity loss as material considerations. We have seen this in Cardiff with the approval of a biomass plant in Splot, the development on the Northern Meadows, and the threatened loss of multiple green spaces in Cardiff, such as Danes Court Woods and Britannia Park. Is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act fit for purpose in a climate emergency? And if elected, how would your party change the planning system to ensure that climate change is accounted for appropriately and the catastrophic loss of biodiversity is halted? Rhys.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Well, I'll deal with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act first, and the answer, in my view, is a clear no. It's not fit for purpose. And if elected, I wouldn't be supporting aspirational acts only. These acts need to be able to be enforced, and the Future Generations Act has not been able to be enforced at all. There's no point having an act if it hasn't got any teeth. The 3 times people have tried to use it in judicial reviews, it's been thrown out on the first opportunity by judges because you can't tag anything on it at all. It's absolutely pointless. So the first thing I would be looking at is to strengthen the Future Generations Act. If the Senedd wants the Future Generations Act to be used for something, we need to strengthen it. So I would be looking to look at the legislation to amend the act so communities can use it. We'll introduce a nature act. We give a statutory duty on local authorities and governments to restore biodiversity. We'd create an autonomous Welsh planning inspectorate, Cynllunio Cymru, and we'd make sure that it's put in statute that there should be preference for brownfield over greenfield development, renovation over demolition, and planning, housing and environmental policy. That needs to be put in place. With regards to the examples you've said, I see no point at all. With all the houses being built in Llandaf, 8,000 houses being built in Llandaf, why are they building on a small forest only 36 houses in Danesford? It makes no sense at all. I'm also unconvinced about the building on the Northern Meadows. I need to be convinced far more that the cancer hospital is in the right location and the right model before I support the building on the Northern Meadows. And I'm certainly 100% against the military museum down in Cardiff Bay. It has no link to the history of Cardiff Bay at all, and we need to have green spaces in those areas. Diolch.
Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I think, the question is that how it feels to people is that local government are seemingly able to do what they want, using the rules of the day to push through what they like. We currently have a system that disassociates those making decisions with those affected by those decisions, and people feel ignored. I think post-pandemic, people care more than ever about their local community. Let's open up to information for public scrutiny. Tell us why, when oncologists at Velindre, who put patient care above all else, feel that the Northern Meadows is the wrong spot for the hospital. Tell us why we're losing green space in the Bay to a museum and why other proposed sites aren't suitable. And why are we losing forever the woodland at Danes Court for just 30 odd homes? Communities don't want to protest when it's too late. They want to be heard at the start. And if we can get them involved in the communities involved at the start, they actually might then appreciate why some difficult decisions have to be made.
Okay,
and
thank you.
Support these decisions through the decision process.
Thank you. Okay, Jenny.
Thank you very much. Is the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act fit for purpose? Absolutely. If we didn't if we didn't have it, we'd have to invent it. And we are already leading the way around the world in order to have it. That doesn't mean to say that we've given it as much teeth as we need to. But the Public Accounts Committee inquiry that we conducted recently has various recommendations to ensure that all public bodies adhere to it. And Audit Wales and all the other inspectorates all have to inspect in line with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and the Commissioner has considerable powers as well. You can see it reflected in the Llaiber Newydd, the new travel plans, and in the NHS recovery plan. So the Welsh Government is, under Mark Drakeford, really is adopting the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. All public buildings are going to need to be net zero carbon by 2030. So horrendous planning decisions will be averted by that. On the Velindre thing, I'd just like to tell Plaid that actually Rhys at Plaid voted in favour of the Northern Meadows site, because if we don't site it there, we're going to have to site it outside Cardiff.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, Helen?
Yeah, the biodiversity, nature crisis and climate sit at the heart of Wales Green Party policy. And let's remind ourselves what the Wellbeing Future Generation Act is. It places a legal duty on Welsh Government to put sustainability at the heart of decision making, not as a side project, at the heart. And it also promotes long-term thinking. That is a statutory duty. Has that been applied with respect to the Northern Meadows? Well, we've been campaigning hard alongside a community of 7,500 people who've signed a petition, and it hasn't, because the Northern Meadows is enacting a planning permission that was granted 20 years ago. There has been no appraisal of that project in respect to the wellbeing goals. What we would do as Greens is we would strengthen the role of the Future Generations Commissioner to have more teeth. We would also appoint a Commissioner for Biodiversity so that we can halt and reverse the decline of biodiversity across Wales.
Thank you. Callum?
So on terms of protect biodiversity planning and green spaces, the Welsh Conservatives would introduce a community ownership fund and right to bid, which would support the takeover of community assets such as green spaces. We want to develop more urban parks. We want to promote the use of green roofs. We want to double the length of cycle and walking routes in urban residential areas by 2040. And we want to establish a community cycle fund as well, so local communities can fund and design their own cycle paths, and as well as planting 8 million trees a year, which Labour, they missed their own targets on that one. And when it comes to the Future Generations Act, there's quite a lot of rights-based legislation in Wales, but they're no good without remedies. And judicial reviews are incredibly expensive, and there's no localized cheap remedy to challenge public bodies in this area. It's not good for constituents if all the cards are in the hand of the public body. And when it comes to issues of certain green space you mentioned, like Britannia Park, I can see Britannia Park from where I live, if that doesn't sound too much like Sarah Palin. And people don't use it that much. It's a tiny bit of grass, and I think what we need is actually more redevelopment to Cardiff Bay, which is losing businesses right now, and I think a museum of military medicine will be great for that.
Okay, thank you. Rhian?
Thanks. Okay, so the next question is for Helen from the Green Party, and it's on economy and jobs. So how would you support a COVID-19 recovery plan that focuses on building the green economy of the future and ensuring a sustainable path towards prosperity for all in Wales?
Thanks for the question. The pandemic has had a devastating impact on people in Wales and our economy, but it's also shone a spotlight on structural inequality and hit young people and vulnerable communities particularly hard. The Wales Green Party has set out in detail a green transformation fund for Wales. This would meet the scale and urgency needed to invest in carbon reducing infrastructure. It would be at the heart of post-COVID recovery, and it would create tens of thousands of green jobs for people in Wales. And it's based on Green New Deal. This is a tried and tested economic principle that has been used around the globe since the 1930s to deliver jobs, prosperity, alongside better social and environmental outcomes. It actually pays for itself. It not only delivers economic stimulus, but better environmental and social improvements. And we have the framework to do this in Wales. We have the capability, we have the Wellbeing Future Generations Act we've talked about. Specifically, the Green Transformation Fund will deliver energy efficiency, green warm homes that are affordable to heat and therefore lifting people out of fuel poverty. It includes an ambitious retrofitting programme for existing homes to be more efficient. It includes better, affordable, cleaner public transport for all. This means public transport investment coupled with better walking, cycling provision and active travel, and connecting it all so that people can transfer with ease from one sustainable transport mode to another. And this removes economic barriers, particularly for people in low-income areas throughout Cardiff and throughout Wales. We'll also, as I've mentioned in respect to transport, electrify our diesel buses in Wales, and these will be electric buses assembled in Wales and create jobs and opportunities. We'll provide the assurances of a rollout of solar PV across public sector buildings, schools, hospitals, etc. And all of this together represents the political will that gives confidence in investment in skills, jobs, training opportunities, really important for young people at this difficult time.
Helen. Thanks very much. So if we could have a response from Rhys, please.
Thanks very much. Well, Plaid have put the green economy at the heart of our manifesto. We'll have a shovel-ready 6 billion green economic stimulus, which will create 60,000 jobs in our fully costed and independently verified manifesto. That would include, as Helen has said, retrofitting thousands of homes, creating a sustainable Welsh food and farming system, making Wales a world leader in offshore wind, invest in decarbonisation, research in key industries. And we'd also look at the procurement budget we have in Wales. We have a large procurement budget in Wales, but at the moment, too much of that goes out of Wales. We'll get that up from 52% to 75%, creating jobs here in Wales, which in turn will create a low carbon footprint.
Thanks very much, Rhys. Jenny?
Thank you very much. Well, we need to start by amending Part L of the building regulations to ensure that all new buildings are net zero carbon. This was introduced by Gordon Brown in 2007 and torn up by George Osborne in 2015, and it's an absolute disgrace. So we would do that. We would have done it already by now if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So we've got a very successful innovative housing programme on which to build the new housing based on the new Welsh construction methods. And so that we've got a really good example of that. We've got the Young Person's Guarantee, which all young people not in education will be given education, will be given a job or training. And with these jobs or training, we're going to be in important areas like design, precision engineering, manufacturing vehicles, including bikes, bike parts. And that is one of the ways in which we're going to re-engineer the economy. And obviously there's a massive retrofitting of houses and building of new transport in Wales.
Thanks, Jenny. Callum, would you like to respond?
Yeah, so when the Welsh Conservatives are going to want to create 65,000 jobs in the next Senedd term, and that's going to include 15,000 green jobs as well. We want to work with the private sector to attract Wales's first gigafactory. We want to support the Welsh steel industry to become the greenest in the world. We're going to establish a £150 million Wales Marine Energy Investment Fund to purchase equity in marine energy projects, fund a Welsh tidal power feasibility study as well to accelerate the delivery of tidal power projects around Wales. And we want to work with bus companies as well to electrify their fleets and deliver fast charging networks for vehicles throughout Wales because we don't have enough at the moment.
Thanks, Callum. And Alex?
Yeah, our Welsh Lib Dem manifesto is entirely premised upon putting recovery first in our post-pandemic society. We will create a package of investment of £1 billion per year in green projects. And these include tidal renewable energy, roll out electric vehicle charging infrastructure, making Port Talbot a manufacturing hub for offshore wind power, and investing in Holyhead's renewable energy and hydrogen production capabilities. This investment will generate jobs, make our economy stronger, and will grow our manufacturing base, as well as tackling the climate emergency. It will cut CO2 emissions and clean up our environment and make our communities a nicer and healthier place to live.